Hi, and welcome to everybody to yet another session for our affiliates. Our affiliate licensees have the opportunity of participating in this orientation session. We have a couple of people that aren't affiliates yet that have joined us tonight. That's great, or this afternoon at least. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that I learned as a very young policeman was to speak in public. And some of you have heard the story before, and I'll tell the story once again, but it was as simple as this. I was standing in court. I bust a young man for 620 caps of LSD at a discount store in Smith Street in Durban. I did the buy. It was a clean buy. And we bust him. We found the money, and we found the additional drugs under the counter at the music store. And we arrested him and stuck him in court. And of course, we went through the entire process, and I landed up in a situation where I had the long hair and the jeans and the t-shirt, tie-dyed t-shirt at the time of the hippies. And he was dressed in an Italian suit and had a haircut. And he looked like the attorney, and I looked like the accused. And it's quite interesting. And he had an attorney, which really was a high-powered individual. And they were eating me alive in court. Absolutely eating me alive. And the prosecutor adjourned the case, and he took me aside and he said, you're going to have to learn to speak in public, because if you don't know how to speak in public, you're going to not only lose the cases, but it's going to affect your career as well. And I took it seriously and did a Dale Carnegie course. And that was over a period of about 18 weeks, and I completed the course, and it literally revolutionized my life. It changed everything that I am and do and will be. And it is so important for me to get that message through to as many people as possible. So what had happened is that the drug squad, where I was in Durban and Smith Street, they had nobody that was a spokesperson that would go out to colleges and universities and nursing homes and schools and places like that and talk about the evils of drugs. And simply because I was A, English speaking, and B, and I had done a public speaking course, this duty fell on my shoulders. And I loved it. I went from place to place to place to place, and I spoke to people about the evils of drugs. And those were the days of innocence, and things weren't all nearly as bad as they are now. But what also transpired while I was doing that is I discovered I had a second career. So I was a policeman in the daytime, or actually in the evening, and I was a speaker on weekends and other times like that. And there was a revolutionary moment where a woman came to me and she said, so how much do you charge? And I had never, ever, ever thought of it. In fact, I went, no, we don't charge and things like that. And she gave me a voucher, which is equivalent to half my month's salary as a policeman. It was like a little Woolworths voucher or something like that. And something happened up here, and I suddenly realized if I get good at this, I can charge to speak in public. I can charge to speak at conferences. I can charge to do MC functions and things like that, which I did. And I learned how to do it. Then there was another little thing that happened is my partner in crime in the police force, a guy by the name of Andre. Andre was good looking, and he had all these pretty girls that used to hang around him. And Andre's gig was he would go to the fashion shows with these pretty girls because his girlfriend was a model, and he would do the sound. But he had no car. He had the sound system, no car. I had a car, no sound system. So I used to help him, and I used to carry these heavy speakers around and stick them in the back of my little VW, my little 1300 Beetle. And we used to go to these functions. And while I was at one of these functions, just innocently sitting there, the lady that hosted the event, the woman, the event coordinator, said, the MC hasn't arrived. Andre, you must do it. And Andre went, no, I'm not going to do it. So literally, the woman said, and you, whoever you are, you do it. And I became an MC, and I MC'd right up to semifinals for Miss South Africa. I've MC'd around this country. I've MC'd big and small. I still will be MCing the SIOS conference in next year in June or whenever it is. And I now had a public speaking career, and which I was starting to grow. And then I had an MC career. And long and the short of it, I landed up in the Navy as also a public speaker. I was involved in training there. But more importantly, somebody one day asked me to do some voiceovers on a video, which I did. And well, those days it was film, it wasn't even video. Can you believe it? Those big old VHS Betacam tapes. And I was in the naval, the video laboratory, they called it, the lab. And somebody from ESCOM came in and said, oh, you got a nice voice. Can we use your voice on ESCOM training videos? And that launched another career. I became a voiceover artist. And that then eventually led to me making or being a presenter of something like 12 training videos, where I presented them either for ourselves or alternatively, there were hosts of other things that I used to do. I used to do adverts and all kinds of things for people. And then one day I thought, well, I need to find out how good I am, and I need to test myself. And I joined Toastmasters. And John's going to talk to you about Toastmasters and some of the aspects that he's learned there. But from there, it was still a question of, could I be a great communicator? And, where would I go? So I went to radio. And there was a radio station in Cape Town, I think it's still there, called Radio Good Hope. And I auditioned, and they rejected me, like I rejected Darren off Facebook. Sorry, Darren. But they rejected me 2 or 3 times. And then the station manager said, you're probably better suited, not to this young station, but to an older station called Radio Contre. And I went along to Radio Contre, and I auditioned for them, and I failed. And then they said to me, your voice is okay, but you have to learn to speak Afrikaans. And those of you that know me, my parents are Afrikaans, but I've never learned to speak Afrikaans. So I got myself a voice coach. I learned to speak Afrikaans. And I used to read the news on Radio Contre. Dis 5:30 op Radio Contre. En dis Ken Annandale met die nuus. Hierdie bulletin vanaand. And I used to do that night after night after night for 2 years. I also got to MC functions as a result of that. And I started making some seriously good money. Now, I'll end off just by saying this before I introduce our speaker. I'll just say this, that it revolutionized my life. It doesn't matter what I did and where I was. I always have this thing that I can do and love doing, thoroughly enjoyed. And I then got an invitation to do an advert, and there was a studio underneath UCT's Baxter Theatre. And believe it or not, they had faxes those days. So they faxed me the script. I took the script. I read it a couple of times. I arrived in the parking lot, went to reception, walked down to the booth, and there was the sound engineer, and it was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I read the script, and he said, "That's fine." What do you mean it's fine? It normally takes me 4 or 5 takes before I can actually get this thing right. He was happy with the first, because I'd been rehearsing and practicing and making sure that it works. And for about, genuinely, from the time I walked in to the time I walked out, no more than 5 minutes, and I earned 6,000 Rand. That's more than a surgeon will earn in 5 minutes. Unbelievable. Absolutely phenomenal. And then I got a taste of it, and I figured out I can make a lot of money from public speaking, but I had to make the changes. I had to get rid of my Afrikaans accent, at least my English accent, when speaking Afrikaans, and vice versa. And I had to become fluent. And wherever I've gone and whatever I've done and wherever I've been, I say to people, drop what you're doing and learn to speak in public. Drop what you're doing. You're wasting your time on certain things which are not going to enhance your life, like watching videos at night or TV or stuff. Learn to speak in public. So what I've done this evening is I've actually invited John to come along. And John and I are family friends. We've known each other for some years. And John and I had the opportunity of working together on a variety of projects and stuff like that. And I've watched how John has changed from being a trainer to being somebody who is literally, in my opinion, world-class. And he will continue to grow from here onwards. And he'll continue to make the changes. The last thing that I'll say before we get into introducing John is this. Literally, as a result of that, I could then go into the marketplace as a motivational speaker, which I did. And I started charging, and I'm going to run some of these numbers by you quickly. I started charging 5,000 Rand for an hour, 10,000 Rand for an hour, 15,000 for an hour, and just kept on pushing up the prices. And somebody once said to me, he said, "You will never know what you're really worth until you push the limits." 25,000 Rand an hour, 75,000 Rand for a gig. And a little while ago back in Cape Town, I did a firewalk, which is obviously not public speaking, but it's connected. And I spoke to the client's employees or team the night before the firewalk, and that was 20,000 Rand. And then the firewalk, 5,000 Rand. I made 75,000 Rand in less than a day in Langebaan at Club Mykonos. Now, I'm saying this not to brag. I'm saying this to share, to give you hope, and to give you like an insight into the fact that you don't have to just be a trainer. You can be a lot more than that. You can be a platform speaker. You can be a voiceover artist. You can be on radio and television, do those sorts of things if you do the work. They're not going to choose you if you don't do the work. So, having spoken to John, I invited him to come on board and just give us his insights. And what I'd like to do is I want to quickly read the introduction, John's introduction to you. And I'm going to read it off my phone. And John, thank you so much for sending it to me. And I'm going to run through this quickly. It says here, our guest speaker is a paramedic by training and owns frontline emergency care. His training style is highly motivational, enabling people to understand the importance of employee and bystander emergency response. As a public speaker, he is passionate about raising the standards of training and business presentation skills by teaching others to make learning a fun, practical, applicable, and most of all, effective method of change. As part of his personal development, he joined Cape Town Toastmasters Club and progressed through the ranks to winning the Western Cape Toastmasters Public Speaking Championships and becoming the speech evaluation champ. I take pleasure introducing our guest speaker on the topic of lessons from a master public speaker. Are you average, good, or great? The mic is yours, John. Ladies and gentlemen, John Hambleton.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. It's good to be on screen. As my mother would say, that's our kid on telly. Every time she sees me on the computer when we do Skype messages, she thinks I'm on television, so she thinks I'm famous. So just one of her little quirks. She's 94, and the mind is not what it was. So things like that are very, very exciting for her. But thanks, Ken, for this introduction and for inviting me to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just a pleasure to be able to share something of what I've been through, and hopefully someone, maybe just one of you, maybe a few of you, might get some inspiration from it to step out into the world of public speaking. As Ken has shared, it is available to all of us who are presenters. And why not? Why not? It's there for the taking. So I'll give you a little bit of a background to where I come from and why I do what I do. People have often said to me, oh, but you're a natural. You're just so natural at that. And often in Toastmasters, particularly when we're doing things like youth leadership with various schools, they always wrote me in to do the body language and facial expression and vocal variety session, because I've just got a little bit of a flair and a knack for those kind of things, which make public speaking expressive and more interesting than your monotone, boring health and safety presenter who talks like this. And we are going to talk from page 13, and he reads what's on the page. They've got it in their book and it's on the screen, and it's as boring as hell. We don't want to go there. So I hope that some of what I say this afternoon will inspire you to be creative and enthusiastic, and as I say, characterful in your presentation style. So a bit of my background. Where did I come from? Some of you might have heard of a church organization called the Salvation Army. Well, my father, my parents, my mum included, were pastors with the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army is a very musical church. And so in being a young musician with that, we were performing regularly. Yes, it was church events, but they were concerts, and some big concerts as well. And I also studied classical piano from an early age. So very often I was thrust onto the stage as a performer, whether it was within a band or an orchestra or a choir or conducting a choir, or whether it was a solo piano piece that I was presenting. So stage and music got quite a bit of attention. My father was a poet as well, so I would often recite his poetry from an early age, and that just gave me a bit more stage exposure. And I learnt, even again more latterly, that stage time is absolutely essential if you're going to overcome nerves. Doesn't mean they always go away, as I'll come to in just a little while. But I did a lot of that sort of stuff as I was growing up, through pantomime. We used to work for Christmas plays and all that sort of stuff, and various amdram with various organizations, to monologues and candlelight theatre, stuff that I personally enjoy because it's characterful and it's amateur dramatics of different kinds. And it also gives you that stage presence and time. If you are in the world of public speaking, just up front, I'll say, don't stop. Don't have these big gaps of when you don't present. If you're a part-time presenter of courses, try and make them more regular, because stage time is so important. I stopped having piano lessons when I was 23 to start my paramedic career. I'd occasionally sit down and tickle the ivories a little bit, but I didn't have another piano lesson, so I actually stopped learning. And a few years ago, after a 25-year layoff from lessons, I started having lessons again. And at the end of that year, the tutor put me onto the stage to perform quite a technical piece in front of 25 people. And yet as a 12-year-old, I'd played the background music for a choreographed dance on the Royal Albert Hall stage in front of 8,500 people. And I was playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the slow movement. And that was as a 12-year-old. But as a I don't know, 50-something-year-old person sitting in front of 25 people, I nearly died. It was one of the worst, most harrowing, nerve-wracking experiences of my life because I had stopped practicing and getting stage time exposure. So I want to encourage you straight up. Don't stop stage time. Even if it's a bad performance you get, or you get a bad rap from an audience, don't stop. Just keep getting stage time because you don't want to lose your confidence in stage time. So then it came to meeting Ken about 11 years ago. And after doing various projects with Ken, he did one of his, what was then called the TLC program. And in that, he said, if you want to improve or upgrade your skills as a presenter, why not consider joining either the Professional Speakers Association or Toastmasters? So my wife had been a Toastmaster a couple of years before, and I thought, I know those guys, let's go along there. So I joined Toastmasters, and it was just like coming home, really, because I knew everybody. And from there, that was 8 years ago, it was 2012. I've absolutely had a ball. It's been so good. I've enjoyed every bit of it, even the nerve-wracking bits when you get on a competition stage, which is really, really quite tough. Yes, and that led to, in 2013, I'd only been a Toastmaster just under a year when I got onto this contest stage for that particular year. And it's the International Speech Contest. So if you win the Western Cape and you go to the Nationals and you win the Nationals, you go on to the international stage and you have a chance of becoming the world champion of public speaking for that year. And you only get one chance at it, because if you win it, you can't be the world champion again. They only give you the one opportunity to win it. So if you can enter as many times as you like over the years, but if you win it, that's your chance done. It's finished. And then last year I also won the Western Cape speech evaluation contest, and that's really fun because you just evaluate loads of people speaking. You learn an evaluation style, which is it's really constructive to the speaker. If any of you know Toastmasters, and I'm sure some of you have been either members or go to Toastmasters clubs frequently, and there the public evaluation is so helpful because it's constructive and it helps a person grow, and it helps you to fail, but fail forwards, because you pick it up and you carry on and do it again. So that's where I come to with Toastmasters. But through Toastmasters as well, I joined it because I wanted to sharpen the saw of my presentation skills. I felt they needed some upgrading, updating, and it was brilliant. It did just that. It really, really helped me to do that. And I've had so many accolades given me for, oh, we loved it, blah, blah, blah. And some of you have had them as well. You wonder, what do you say? What do you say when they say this? And a friend of mine years ago said, well, did you enjoy it? Was it a pleasure? I said, well, yeah, it was. And he says, well, tell them that then. If they come along and say, oh, you're fantastic, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, say, oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. It was a pleasure. Never say, oh, no problem. No, never say no. It's like when somebody presents you with a present. It really gets me when people are presented with a gift and they say, oh, you shouldn't have. Well, why not? They're giving you a gift out of the kindness of their heart. So accept it and say, oh, that's really great. That's very kind of you. Thanks so much. And accept it with the great heart that it comes from. So that's where my public speaking really comes from to date. And last year, one of the television, morning show television programs contacted Cape Town Toastmasters, because if you go on Toastmasters in Cape Town Toastmasters comes up top of the pile. And they were looking for somebody to give simple tips on how to give a great presentation. And they were looking for someone, so I put it out to my club. Anybody want to go and do this? Nobody did. So as the president of the club at that time, I've just finished my term as president of Cape Town. They said, yes, come along and give it. So I did. And I got so much feedback from that saying, great, we really want to learn how to do public speaking more. And one of the things I love doing within Toastmasters, but generally, is mentoring and coaching. And they're just loves of mine because they just help people grow. And I love to see people grow and spread their wings. One thing I'm going to ask before I get into the simple tips for giving a great presentation is, can you all mute your mic so that we don't have animal, budgerigar, dog, or child noises? Can you mute your mic? Ken, are you able to mute other people's mics? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just so we don't get any disturbance and I don't lose my train of thought. So, simple tips for giving a great presentation. Now, this might be old hat for some of you, because some of you have probably been in the industry longer than I have. So I'm not going to try and teach granny to suck eggs. If this is your field of expertise, then great. And I really want to encourage you to carry on with that. I don't claim to be the world's greatest, but I do aspire to greater things in public speaking. And again, I thank Ken for this opportunity as well. So I've, in putting these simple tips for giving a great presentation together, I put it into two main sections. There's the preparation phase, and then there's the presentation phase. And I've got 3 little tips in the preparation phase and about 5 tips in the presentation phase. And afterwards, Ken is going to field a Q&A session. So save your questions. If you've got a notepad, I would suggest you can write these things down. I'll just give outlines to each tip, and then you can just write them down. And if you want my notes, I'm happy to send them to Ken, and he can give them out to anybody who wants them. If you want to get hold of me after this, then you can send Ken a message, and Ken will pass it to me later on. All right, so simple tips for giving a great presentation. Firstly, preparation. You've got to be prepared when you're going to give a speech. Now, being prepared might be you spend hours or days or even weeks preparing for a big event. Or because of experience in public speaking over a period of time, you start to realize that there's a pattern, or you have a particular pattern that's unique to you. So you just know that when somebody says, "Oh, can you just do the thanks at the end of the talks?" You think, "Yeah, no problem, I'll do that." And you take some simple notes as you go through, and you get up and you literally speak off the cuff. And that's not a bad thing at all. It can be a bit nerve-wracking, but it's not a bad thing at all. So in preparation, firstly, get organized. And in getting organized, you know from running a business, you've got to have a plan. So here's the plan for preparing your speech. Firstly, you've got to have an opening. Like any good story, you've got an opening, a body, and a conclusion. So those are the 3 areas of the plan: opening, body, and a conclusion. So the opening. Have an opening that is catchy, a phrase, a word, or a couple of words, maybe a little bit of alliteration. On Tuesdays at the moment, I do a little voice message for a friend of mine who's a pastor in Cathcart, and we share a love of God's word, and we just send out a message each day. He does a couple of days, I do Tuesdays, and a few other people do the other days. And in there, these are little 6-7 minute presentations. There's an opening, a body, and a conclusion. So the introduction needs to be catchy, a little catchphrase, a word, a statement, but something that is short. Doesn't want to be long. You don't want to do a big paragraph to start off with. A short phrase, which is interesting and will catch their attention to start off with. And I'm going to come back to that one just now. So that's your introduction. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple, but make it something that catches their ear and is interesting. It's like your bulletin to start off with. Then the body. And if you, and well, you'll learn this as you go along, but if you can, try to get your opening to connect with the body. So that was my intro, and now here is the story, the 3 points. And you could have 3 stories, short ones, or it could be a story in 3 points, but those points, 3, not more than 3. If you must push it to 4, then the 4th one's got to be very, very interesting as well, because normally what we find is if you go beyond 3 points, and then 5, and then 6, and then oh, here are my 15 points on how to run a bath. I mean, people are going to fall asleep after point number 3. So you don't want to have more than about 3 points. If you have got more than that, then I'm going to suggest you say, guys, I've got much more to say about this, but I'm going to save that for a later day. For now, I'm just going to stick to these 3 points. Keep it that short and sweet, because you'll keep the people's interest just in those 3 points. And again, as you do your 3 points, make sure they're clearly delineated so that we know this is point 1, this is point 2, this is point 3, and then link them. So linking this one into my second point, or following on from that, here is what happened next into my second point. And then you come to point 3. And so the aftermath of that was this. So your points are actually linked and connected. And then you go into your conclusion. And we don't always have to say, to conclude with, or in conclusion. And so as I wrap up, you don't have to say those things, because those are old hat and people get bored of those things. And you might actually find people going, and then you say in conclusion, they go, yeah, because you've been going on too long. So keep it simple, keep it straight, and then you come to your conclusion, and they'll almost know when you go into your wrap up, because this is the kind of end of the story. And you can say, so finally, and here we go into the end. Now here's the clever bit. In your conclusion, use something or all of what you said in your introduction. So you link your introduction to your conclusion, and you've got these 3 interesting points in the middle, and the intro linked to the conclusion makes that a really tasty sandwich of a speech. And it's tasty to the ear, tasty to the mind, and it's something that people will remember. Now, they might not remember everything you said, but if it's tasty and it's interesting and catchy, they will remember something of how it made them feel. And that's the substance of it. And I've had, some of you will have had, I'm sure as well, I know Ken's had, but you get people who run up to you after and say, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And they're so motivated by what you've said, even in a short speech. Once I related the topic of my first flying lesson and how I learned to fly, and how I'm in the process of getting my private pilot license. It's taking a while, but I'm getting there. And I gave a presentation on this at Endler Hall in Stellenbosch to a group of the medical faculty that were finishing their term in training. And I said to my wife, there were something like 850 people. I said to my wife, if one person gets it here, it'll be worth it. And so I shared this thing on how I'd learned to fly, and how the process of learning to fly and various other impacts it had on me had set me up for doing other things, taking off in life and doing some much better things. And this woman came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes. She said, I'm going to learn to fly. She said, great, yes. But I said, yeah, and I bet that's not all, is it? And she said, no, there's so much I want to do. All because of that tasty speech sandwich. So keep it short, keep it short. That's getting organized. That's the plan. Then in that plan, decide, are you going to use notes? Are you going to use crib cards, or are you going to try and wing it and do it off the cuff? You're going to wing it off the cuff, then you really need to make sure you know what you're doing. So the points I've got here, in using notes, keep them simple. Like crib cards are fine, where you've got little cards you flip behind each other. And don't fill those cards with lots of words. Try and keep those cards simple. A heading or 2 or 3 headings, just the thoughts that you want to portray. And yeah, learn to speak off the cuff as often as you can. That's really, really a strong thing for a public speaker, is getting used to just getting up and speaking rather than preparing loads of script. And the worst thing is to have all this script that you're trying to remember, or you have a sheet of paper with you and then you drop it, or you drop your crib cards on the floor. So again, keep it simple. It comes down to that whole thing of keeping it straight and simple. Then in your notes as well, I've got here humor. Humor is a must. We need to just inject little bits of humor. It doesn't have to be big, loud, gut-rocking, laugh a minute stuff. It doesn't have to be that. I mean, that would be more of a comedian type presentation. But yeah, humor, again, keep it short. And I would emphasize here, because I've heard it in recent times, is I would emphasize, do not ever use dirty jokes. Jokes are jokes, and they can be good and catchy, but use them wisely. be very cautious about the jokes you use and don't use dirty jokes. And then point number 3 is slides and PowerPoint. If you're going to use PowerPoint, again, keep them simple, but keep them minimal. We often use, I think we say rather use pictures than words, because some people insist on killing their audience through death by PowerPoint. I think some of you know what I mean. Well, here's the budget analysis for the 2019-2020 year, and you've got this wallpaper of numbers. And it means nothing to anyone. It's not impressive and it's boring and people will fall asleep. So don't kill people with PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint is not fun. Keep that simple. And they say no more than 6 words a line and no more than 6 lines per page if you're being really simple. Sometimes you can push it a little bit more, but rather keep it minimal if you can. All right, so that's the preparation. Get organized, have a plan. Notes, keep them simple, and then slides and the use of a projector, if necessary, keep that minimal as well. And then we go into the second section, which is preparation. Sorry, not preparation, presentation, the actual now you're going to present. And for those of you who are starting out, I know you get nervous, and we all get nervous at times. I know I've been nervous. Like I said, the contest stage is, that is nerve-wracking. I said to somebody last year when I didn't win the national final. Somebody did a much better job than I did, obviously, because they won it. And I said to him after, I don't know what's worse, the contest nerves or the nerves of disappointment when you lose, because it is absolutely gut-wrenching. It is horrible. But then I realized what I'd done wrong. I knew I'd made the errors that had led to my not getting through to go on further than the national final. And I accepted it. I owned up to my own mistake and I moved on. And so I was able to go back to the conference the next day, and I really didn't have a care in the world that I hadn't got through beyond the national final. And it was great. I felt relieved and released because I didn't have those horrible contest nerves anymore, but they do happen. The nerves still happen. So here's a tip to start off with in presentation. If you get nervous, even if you've been presenting for a long while, and let's say you're asked to speak at a big function and there are thousands of people there, and you're telling yourself, oh my God, I've never done this before, I'm so nervous. When you get up to speak, don't ever tell your audience that you are nervous. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've never done this before. I'm a little bit nervous today. And they don't want to hear that. It's boring twaddle, and they don't want to hear that. They want to hear your story. So tell them your story. Don't tell them you're nervous. Never apologize for nervousness. Just tell your story. That's point number 1 in the presentation side. Then we come to the actual presentation itself. Is body language is as I said, it's one of my favorites. So I threw body language in there first because too often people stand stock still behind a lectern and you don't get to see them. And eventually what could be a really great speech ends up being mediocre at best and boring at worst. I mean, really. Standing behind a lectern, when the first Toastmasters speech contest contestant stepped out from behind the lectern, and I think it was about 1983, something like that, 1984. Nobody had ever done it. You read from behind it, you spoke from behind a lectern. And when that first person stepped out from behind the lectern, people went, oh, what is he doing? And he broke the mold. He got out, and people afterwards said, but that was more of an act. It was more of a performance. And he said, but that's public speaking. Public speaking is a performance. And he used body language in a different way for the first time in public speaking. So in body language, I've got 4 points here: facial expression, gestures, confident posture, and then a thing or two about positioning. So facial expression, that's something I can't help. When I'm expressing myself, my eyebrows go up, my face changes shape, and it's something that people say, but that makes it interesting. We can read you through your facial expression. And my wife and I were having a conversation this morning about how people can read your vocal tone on the phone. They can read your mood. They can read your current position in life through your vocal tone on the phone, even though they can't see you. So, and I'm sure some of you have had people who've commented on how you sound on the phone. So it happens. But at the same time, in public, facial expression is very, very important. Try to use your face. As we do, when somebody tells you a joke, you don't go, ha, 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 ha. That's interesting. Do you? You go, ha, 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 and your face comes alive. I mean, I was, as one of my roles as a paramedic, I often go on tour with adventure tours as a medical chaperone with groups of school kids. And one of the kids a couple of years ago, he had the very, very unfortunate situation in life of having no adrenal gland function. He got adrenal glands, but they don't work. And so this kid had zero emotion. He's the only person I've ever met in my life who had zero emotion. He was a hell of a nice kid, and I got to know him quite well, but he had no emotion. His face was deadpan all the time. So there we are going down the scariest rapid on that section of the river, on the Orange River, which is really scary for most people. It's Shambok, for those of you who know the Orange River. It's an interesting rapid, and it can be fun. So his little mate is going, come on, Lenny, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, like this. And Lenny's paddling from the front going, yeah, okay. And he's just paddling, deadpan face, no emotion at all. Now, all of us, I think, have good adrenal function. Adrenals are what give you your emotion. They are our emotion. There's 52 hormones that come out of our adrenal glands. We only know the names of about 6 or 7 commonly, but they give us our emotion. They give rise to the expression we can give with our face. And our body language. It's an expressive tool. So I really encourage you, use your body, film yourself, embarrass yourself, film yourself, jump out of the box and do something absolutely crazy. Get over yourself, get over the embarrassment. Because once you do that 3 or 4 times, you've cracked body language, because it doesn't matter. People would rather you were animated than standing stiff and starchy behind a lectern. So facial expression is good. Hand gestures, if you're going to use your hands, make it intentional. So if they're too much like this, oh, I've got to tell you this story, and like the Italians, they're very expressive with their hands. If you're going to use your hands, then use them either meaningfully, either keep them together, maybe down by your side. Hands in pockets is not a good one, because it means you're probably hiding something or you're extremely nervous. So rather keep your hands by your sides or one hand in front of you. And there's loads more I could say about hand gestures. Open-handed is much better if you're using hand gestures. And if you're going to refer to somebody in the audience, Mrs. Smith, you had a question. Use an open-handed gesture, not a Mrs. Smith pointed finger, because it can appear very rude to point a finger. Open-handed gesture, Mrs. Smith. And an open-handed gesture is friendly, whereas a pointed finger is rather unfriendly. So open-handed gestures. And then I've got here, don't fiddle with stuff. If you're one of these guys, you've got a pen in your hand and you know, you're doing this while you're talking and you're clicking the pen. That's such an irritating thing, clicking the pen while you're talking. Irritating. Or sliding your feet on the floor and these little idiosyncrasies, as we call them, are very frustrating. So not fiddling with stuff. And if you are needing to wear glasses, whether they're reading glasses or real glasses, if it's reading glasses particularly, this is very, very irritating. Oh, let me just look at my notes. And you take them off again. Oh, let me just look at that one. And it's very, very irritating to the audience. If you're going to wear them, wear them. If you're not going to wear them, don't wear them. But if maybe you can get used to wearing contact lenses like I have over the years, it's much, much better than constantly putting your glasses on and off. Don't fiddle with stuff. It gets very, very irritating. Then the confident posture. I've mentioned about hand positioning, standing where you need to stand to present that point. And I've got, with this confident posture, I've got intentional positioning, not aimless pacing. Because you do get some people who they walk up and down. Normally I would do this in a much bigger setting than I could show people, but you're just going to have to use your imagination for now. Some people just pace backwards and forwards in a 2 or 3 meter line, and they wear a trough in the carpet eventually, just walking up and down. Or they do this kind of grid within a meter, and they're walking backwards and forwards, and people are sitting there like this, and eventually they're hypnotized and they'll agree to anything you tell them to do. Just intentional positioning is so important. So I've got point 1 of my speech is over here. This is point 1. Then I come to point 2. I can go to this side of the stage. And then I come to point 3, which is going to lead to my conclusion. I'm in this part of the stage, and then I finish with my conclusion, which brings it all together. So intentional positioning is very, very important, rather than standing still. Some people do when they're very nervous is they'll stand with one leg behind the other, cross legs while they're standing on stage. It shows real lack of confidence. You don't want to show your lack of confidence. So just stand on both feet. And if you're going to stand still, then stand on both feet. But preferably use the stage wisely with intentional positioning. Then we've got eye contact. Keeping your eye on person. And something I've done here, and this is something some of you might have learnt in Zoom meetings, sometimes, and I can do it on my screen now, sometimes your picture of everybody is lower down on the screen. Can you see how now I'm looking down at myself instead of, if I move it back to the top just under the green light? Now, when I look at myself on the screen, I'm looking just below the green light, but you can't see the different positioning of my eyes. So I'm actually talking to you. And eye contact is very, very, very important, because if you don't keep contact with people and your eyes are often averted, or you're looking up or looking down, it can be a sign that you don't really mean what you say. Can show a marked lack of integrity sometimes. So try to always look at the green light, or if you must look at your picture on the screen, then make sure it's the picture is right under the, I've minimized the actual presentation camera to a small screen so I can see my notes on the screen, because often a lot of people are reading from the screen and you can see that they're looking down the screen as the notes go down. So you learn to scroll it to keep it just under the camera. And you can minimize, you don't have to look at your own picture, but you keep each line, if possible, just under the camera. Okay, so eye contact is very, very important. With eye contact, if you're going to be looking at people in the audience as well, look at them for 2 seconds. So you're aiming a question at them, and then you go across to the next person and you look at them over there. That's in a big crowd. Okay, so maintaining eye contact for about 2 seconds, not much longer, because then it can seem a little bit intimidating if you're constantly looking at that person. So a new point has a new focus, but keep yourself focused on the audience. You get some people who look down at the floor, they look down at their feet, or they look up at the ceiling, this thing. Keep your eyes on the audience, somewhere on the audience, so they're actually focused on them. So that was point 6 overall, point 3 in this second section, and that was eye contact. Then we come to vocal variety. This is a very, very important one. Firstly, volume. Your volume has got to be appropriate for the size of the venue you are in. Now, obviously, I'm in my house here, and I'm keeping my voice fairly moderate because my wife is working in another room and she might be on a telephone call as well. And it's a small, moderately enclosed environment. Obviously, if I'm speaking at Endler Hall in Stellenbosch, it's a big stage, then it's going to be different. I want to fill that. But here's the thing. If you are using a microphone, particularly a handheld microphone, one of the things that really drives me nuts is when you go to some special event, some seminar, some celebration, and the guy on the mic loves his own voice. He's got a microphone and a sound system which is doing the work for him. Why is he shouting? Why do preachers shout? Puts me off straight away. I mean, a preacher can be really good and get your attention and grab your heart, but if he's going to shout and scream, turns me off. In fact, my wife and I are doing a theology course at the moment, and the presenter, a guy in England, he just talks conversationally like this all the time. And somebody actually complained about it a couple of weeks ago. Oh, he's too conversational. I said, well, as a trainer of public speakers, I think conversation is much, much nicer because he's using all the natural inflection of his voice, and his tone is nicely cadenced. It goes up and down quite naturally, and he's not trying to impress anybody. He's not trying to force it, but his voice is not monotone, and he's not speaking on one level like this, which is really boring. And you get people whose voice might go up a little bit and then he comes down a little bit, but it's generally monotonic and it's dead boring. So use the range wisely as well. So it's volume and range. Then speed, keep it well paced, but not rushed. And you've noticed that when I get excited about a certain area, I can suddenly get rushed and speed up, and people can't quite get what I'm saying because I've got an English accent and I don't have an Afrikaans accent and blah, blah, blah. And it goes very, very fast. And then eventually you're so excited and people can't understand what you're saying. So speed is very, very important. Keep it well paced and not rushed. And then pauses, the effective use of the pause. So I'm emphasizing this point because I really want to help you understand that in using pauses, you can make them quite dramatic. And so the use of a pause only for 1 second, maybe if it's real heavy emphasis, you could use 2 seconds, but 1 second is usually enough, but it's a time enough to take a breath and then carry on. And it doesn't have to be too long, but the pause can give great emphasis to what you're saying. And too many people rush in. And I've heard so many where after they finish speaking, you're out of breath yourself because they didn't stop to take enough pauses and you get out of breath. So keep the pauses short but appropriate. And then lastly on this section on vocal variety is avoid filler words. The favorite ones are and because they just, my next point is, and we don't realize we're doing it, but the and the come in there a lot. And we took apart a doctor's speech some time ago. A couple of my colleagues and I, one of them was quite a recording artist. So he took the voice recording and cut out all the and ums. Now this was I think she was doing a 25-minute presentation as part of her dissertation, and it was some hectic technical medical thing. But he took it, and he took out all the and ums and the other filler words. And he said afterwards, listen to this, because I've taken out all your filler words. Your 25-minute speech has now become 13 minutes. He took out 12 minutes of ums, and crutch words and filler words. And it changed the speech. When she listened to it, she was absolutely blown away that she could and so much. So the crutch words we generally use an and but they're things like. We live in the like generation. So like, it was like this, and it's kind of like that. And like comes into it a lot. And people use these because they're little fillers, and it shows a lack of confidence. So like, I mean, basically, and all these words that we fill into things. And often when a person says, well, basically it's like this, usually tells you they haven't got a cooking clue what they're talking about. Because basically it's one of those wonderful filler words that is so overplayed and overused that literally tells you, Alan, does this guy really know what he's talking about? So that's the vocal variety section. And then lastly, the last section is practice. What can I say about practice? I've said a little bit in my intro at the beginning, and that is stage time. Practice, practice, practice. It's the real way to overcome nervousness, and it takes time. Becoming an effective public speaker takes time. It's not an instant thing. As I've often said in Toastmasters presentations, it's something that takes time, and every great speaker once upon a time wasn't a great speaker. So it takes time. And as Ken has said, that he was given an opportunity to step up and speak after doing something like a Dale Carnegie course. And Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters, I think, were on a similar sort of track, and there's been a number of them over the years. So I would encourage you, practice, practice, practice. Grab every opportunity you get, especially when you're not prepared. One of my mentor, I've got to give a little note on her tonight because we've got our Toastmasters presentation awards this evening. And my mentor is a brilliant leader and public speaker in her own right. And she's really, really good. Aletta Rashah, some of you might have heard of her and know her. And she did a talk at our national conference a couple of years ago. And the presentation was entitled, How to Crack a Speech with No Time to Prepare. It was this whole thing of speaking off the cuff. And the more seasoned you become as a presenter and a public speaker, the more you will be inclined to be able to speak off the cuff. And I really encourage you to do it more and more. And 3 times in the 2 weeks following her presentation, I was asked to, literally the Monday after the Saturday when she did the presentation, I was driving to a meeting, and the MC for the evening rang me and said, John, we've had a cancellation. One of our speakers had cancelled at the last minute. Can you give a speech tonight? Can you be the first speaker? And I was driving, I was literally 10 minutes away from the venue. And it would have been so easy to say, oh no, I haven't got anything prepared. Sorry, I can't do that. But I heard Aletta's words in my head. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Now, I don't know what I spoke about. I can't remember at all. but I put it into practice straight away. How to crack a speech with no time to prepare. Get up and do it, even if you don't know what you're going to do. Remember, opening, body with 3 points, and a conclusion. And believe it or not, you can put that little model of opening, body, and conclusion, even with 3 points, into a 2-minute speech. And it makes it really, really interesting. And it's practice. So I encourage you, do it again and again and again. Don't turn down the opportunities to speak. And in your general presentation in front of classes, ask yourself the question I had to ask myself a number of times when I was doing a training of trainers, starting to train trainers, and that was, if this was a television program or show, would I want to watch it? That is when you're asking yourself about your presentation. Because if you say yes to that, then chances are people are also going to want to listen to you as a presenter. So that's what I've got to say there. That's just some simple tips of giving a great presentation. I hope it's been helpful to some of you, and even to those of you who've been seasoned presenters for a while. And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Ken. Thank you, everybody.
John, thank you so much. Penny's applauding for you over here. She's going, bravo, 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 bravo. Well, all right, I'm sure you can carry on a lot more tips and hints and bits and pieces like that. But I think that the main thing that I got was, let's start on this journey. Now, I tried to tempt you with the money, but there is so much more that you can achieve as well. You can develop a name for yourself. You can create a client base for yourself. You can do all kinds of things of that nature. So if you wouldn't mind, those of you that would like to send John a comment, just send the message to me with your name, and then I'll just quickly forward them to John as well. So just WhatsApp them to me. I'll forward them to John so he can get it, just by way of encouragement to him. So John, from Penny and myself, we want to say thank you so much. We want to say thank you on behalf of the affiliates. And having said that, I'm sure there are some questions that the folk would like to ask. So if you'd like to open your microphones, everybody please open your microphones and feel free to ask John a question. Or I also said, as a temptation for you to come on and listen on, is I will give you a copy of a book that I wrote some time ago that was part of the TLC, the Trainer Licensee course. I just called it Power Pack Presentation Skills, and it was a textbook that I wrote specifically for a course. So I'm sure that if you want that, just once again, WhatsApp me. I use WhatsApp a lot more than I used to, and I'll send that to you. So John, question time. Anybody from the floor, while you are getting ready, anybody just switch your mics on. I'm going to go through this process. Nicolise Grobler says, thank you, John. It's the small things that matter. Yeah. And while we're about this, I just want to say to George Urquhart, George, welcome. You are, I'm not sure who came first, Nikki Gous or you, in terms of our latest affiliates. Welcome on board. George did. Penny says George came in first and then Nikki. And it's going to be great having you on the entire program and the process, things like that. I met George for the first time in Durban at the Train the Trainer event. So thank you so much. Alrighty. Okay, question time. Anybody want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Alan.
Yeah. Just a question. These filler words, how do you train yourself to remove them from your vocabulary?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a common question, actually. How do you? It's practice, Alan, and it's practicing determinedly. As John Maxwell said, be intentional. You wrote a book on intentionality a few years back, and you intentionally want to avoid the filler words. So you deliberately get up to speak, and when you know that you put in an and an you say, damn, I did it again. And in our Toastmasters meeting, we have a person in the meeting who's designated for that evening as the R counter. Yeah. And they count all the R's, ums, and crutch words. And they get up at the end and they say, well, so-and-so did 30 so's, and someone said 15, just to catch it up, to make you aware of it. And then it comes down to recording. If you can video yourself, if you've got a presentation to give, do the embarrassing thing, and most people hate it. Record yourself, video yourself, or get a friend, somebody who can maybe hold you accountable to record you, video you, and listen to yourself. We all, oh God, do I really sound like that? It's terrible. But do it. Do the ugly thing and do it, because then you learn from that. Oh, gee, this is how many times did I say that? It's so much time wasting. You learn by doing it. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. Who's next? Anybody else want to ask John anything? Anything? Okay, John, while they're mustering up the question there, I want to ask you a question about how important is rehearsal to you, and how often do you rehearse for an award-winning presentation at Toastmasters?
Yeah, it's a good one. When we're doing these contest speeches, particularly, usually we've learned to script, because it is an act, it's a performance. And we have the opportunity to repeat it again and again, because we can practice it on any club. And in the evaluation contest last year, in the run-up to the contest, in the last 2 weeks before the contest, I did 23 evaluations. I went to so many clubs and I just evaluated anybody I could, and it was just stage time and practice, 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 practice. And so when it comes to the actual speech presentation, like doing, say, a 20-minute keynote speech, motivational speech on a big stage, or longer, you're going to go through a script. And I would say with the longer ones, try to have the points, as I said, the crib notes and the points, and keep it to the point so you speak through the points rather than trying to remember a script. But if you are going to do a short one, you're going to remember a script, then you've got to rehearse it until you can say it in your sleep. And I've done that. And I've rehearsed it on my wife and on friends and over and over and over again until you know it. Because once you memorize it, it's like memorizing a piece of music. My piano tutor used to say, memorize it until you've got so much of it and you know it that you can do it blindfold. Because then you don't have to look at the dots. You don't have to look at the notes to remember what you've got to play. And it's the same with a speech. You don't have to look at the crib notes to remember what you've got to say, because it's so much a part of you. It's become part of you. So you're just all virtually talking off the cuff. And that's practice. So again, it comes back to many hours of just practicing the same thing. But most of our speeches aren't like that. Most of our speeches are stuff that we can actually talk quite naturally. Yeah.
John, thank you so much. Somebody was going to ask a question. Was it Michelle? Go right ahead.
I don't think it was me, Ken.
Okay, not a problem at all. So while you must have some more questions there, I want to say, Evan, welcome as an affiliate. I'm kind of getting the opportunity of going through all the pictures over here, going, welcome, 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 welcome. So we've got 3 new affiliates on here, Evan and Nikki Goos and George Urquhart. Great to have you guys with us. I'm sure everybody knows about that page that I've got on the old website, where we've got the video clips about orientation, getting used to the training material. And then to anybody that's come on more recently now, please do not hesitate to contact Penny or myself if you want to spend half an hour or so and just talk through whatever it is that is on your mind. John, I'm going to ask you a question. Are there any specific books, YouTube clips, TED Talks, or anything like that that you would make reference to that influenced you?
Yeah, I've said to groups of people I'm training as trainers, what do you want to give your delegates? What soul food do you want to give your delegates? And so I say, what's your diet? What's your media diet? What are you watching, reading, and listening to? Because the substance of what you consume will be the substance of what you speak. What goes in comes out. Like with diet, what you eat eventually comes out. So the diet of media, what you watch, read, and listen to eventually comes in. What goes in comes out. So what we read is particularly important. So reading motivational stuff. I mean, if you're watching gothic and horror and murder and this sort of stuff, and the news, I mean, you watch the evening news, eventually the negativity is going to come out of your mouth. But if you're reading motivational stuff and you're watching motivational stuff and you're determined to motivate and encourage people, it will come out. So I would suggest John Maxwell and Jim Rohn and Les Brown and these motivational people. But one book, I think, in terms of presentation skills that helped me was by Paul du Toit. What was it called? not dynamic presentation skills.
Paul was the president or the founding member of the Professional Speakers Association. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, he was, and a really, really great guy, really great speaker. He's a conflict resolution expert, as far as I know, and he's very, very good at what he does. And his book was very good. I think it's just called Presentation Skills. It's got a big lion on the front cover. It was very, very good. So other things to watch. Yes, if you want to just be inspired by watching people who've got to the World Champions stage, you can click on Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speakers, and you'll on YouTube it'll come up with all the latest and greatest, and it even goes back, I think, as far as 1986. But the one that was my favorite in there was the 2014 winner, a young Sri Lankan guy with an unpronounceable name, as most Sri Lankans have. But it was just a brilliant speech. No wonder he won it, because it was so well constructed. It had all the points. The only one thing I would have picked him up on was his facial expression, but there was a little bit there. But it was great. It was just a brilliant speech, and that just inspired me so much. So yeah, watch them. Watch great world-class public speakers. They are very, very inspirational and encouraging.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. I saw that there was a message from Mornay, from Dan. He just popped a message into the notepad there, and he says, a great talk, a YouTube talk. Mornay, if you can hear me, I'm sure you can you just send that to me as a WhatsApp, and I'll send it to everybody so that they can go and have a look at it. Now, I wanted to share a couple of things with you as well, not so much in terms of becoming a great speaker, because obviously John has done that adequately. But I'll tell you what I did. And I like to tell these stories, and some of you that have been on the trainer with us will have heard the story, but I was running a health and safety training program at Caltex Refinery down in Milnerton. And I was doing my little number, and some of you may or may not know, I used to stand on tables, I used to pour jugs of water on the floor, I used to roll around on the ground, I used to do all kinds of crazy things just to keep the health and safety people inspired and educated, or just entertained. And at tea time, this guy came up to me and he said to me, so what are you guys doing inside there? And he was the sales manager of Caltex Refinery, and his name was Bertus Harmse. And I said, well, we're doing this health and safety thing. He said, oh, you've got to come and do it for my team. And I went, health and safety for your team? You're a sales team. And he said, no, come and inspire them. I went, okay, well, fine. Well, the long and the short of it is that I went back to the office, brainstormed a session, spoke to various staff members. I had a whole bunch of staff members. We put a workshop together, and we called it Movers, Shakers, Moaners, and Groaners. And Movers, Shakers, Moaners, and Groaners became this book. It was a keynote address. I've sold over 25,000 copies of that book. Movers and Shakers has literally got me in everywhere. I was on the Felicia Mabuza shuttle show. I've been on morning breakfast. I then got the Harley Davidson and rode around, even at the NOSA conference at Noshcon in Sun City, did Movers and Shakers, Movers and Shakers. And people like this term, they like the name. But there was a journey between the time that I got this workshop together, and I needed to practice it. That's exactly what John was saying. So I would phone up. I would actually promote myself. I would phone up Roundtable, Rotary, Lions Club, anywhere that I know that they need a speaker. And I say, I've got this. Well, in fact, it was even before the book. I said, I've got this talk. Would you like me to come and do it for you? And they go, well, who are you? And some of them chance on me. Sounds like a song title. And then, as you're doing this talk at Rotary or someplace like that, Roundtable, somebody would come up to you and say, well, can you come and do that for my staff? That's what I did. I spoke anywhere, everywhere, any opportunity. I spoke to schools and anywhere where I could connect with adults who could possibly use my services. And what really happened was that my health and safety business continued. I had a team, and my motivational speaking grew and grew and grew and grew. And then we started putting workshops together, and we did the motivational stuff. And those of you that know the story as well, you know that the motivational stuff also turned into team building, which turned into firewalks. So we have a company that is dedicated to team building and firewalks. And health and safety and IntraSafe isn't our only business. Penny's got her own company, the show business company. I've got this other company that does the team building and the firewalks and the motivational speaking and the book sales and things like that. So I want to just sow some seeds there. Just think about it. If you're doing nothing at the moment and your business is quiet and there's not much happening, pick up the phone, volunteer to go and speak. Volunteer to go and speak. I've been speaking to John about getting onto radio. Some of you may or may not know the name Andre de Toy. Andre was a client of mine. He was the managing director of a company called Hanover Reinsurance. I did a movers and shakers talk for him now. And Andre's journey has now meant that he's one of the prominent presenters as an ex-MD of Hanover Reinsurance on Smile, the FM station in Cape Town. One of my adopted son, Greg Sir Mongpong, who has worked with me on lots, and John knows him as well, lots of firewalks, things like that. He is now on Zone Radio. So, you know, who knows where this will take you? And I must tell you something, John's brilliant, and he's got this beautiful voice. Greg's voice is like, well, Greg, do some work on your voice, which I've been speaking to him about. But he's on radio, he's got his own slot. You can listen to Zone Radio on streaming or on wherever, Saturday afternoons, and he does that. So I'm saying to you, there are opportunities if you volunteer. Just get clever and volunteer. Said to somebody this morning as well, and I'll gladly share this in one of the sessions, he's put together 5 or 6 team building activities and games, and then offer that for free to your client. Or you say, I'll come and do this training for you, but we will do this for free, as like a little bundle. And John will know this, that, and may I say this, John, you know, I don't know how many years you've been doing first aid training, but you need a little spark. You need something different when you're doing it. And what do you do in terms of team building and interventions and activities during your training sessions?
Yeah, it's in any training course, not just first aid, but if they're sitting on seats for a prolonged period of time, it can be torture. So we try not to make the sessions longer than an hour and a quarter. Usually that's enough. 75 minutes. Some people say no more than 45 minutes. We normally say about 75 minutes. And then we do various things. Team building games, you can pick up whole lists of various team building games on the net. Ball games are particularly good, where they've got one I love to do is don't drop the client, or don't drop the patient, or whatever it is. And the ball game is where you got anything from 5 people in a ring up to 9 people, because beyond that it gets unmanageable. And you separate them, you spread them out in a ring, and the person opposite is the next number, so 1, then the opposite one is 2, and then it comes back to 3, and it goes round this thing until you've gone round the square until you've got the 5 or 9 people, whatever it is. And then you give them a ball and you say, throw that to number 2, who throws it to 3, who throws it to 4, throws it to 5, throws it to 6, etc. And then once they've got that ball going and they've got the handle of handball, you throw in another one. And eventually you've got 5 balls going. Well, you should have and could have. You've got 5 balls going all at once. And they're doing this thing where they're catching and throwing, and they get into a rhythm of doing this. And I mean, they drop the ball and then it all goes haywire and balls go flying everywhere and the dogs run to chase the balls and everything. So it's hilarious, but it's physical fun. And you need those things as icebreakers, not just the initial icebreaker in the introduction to the whole seminar or whatever it is, but icebreakers in between, just to keep people from falling asleep. And we do them after lunch to stop, to let the food go down to stop them falling asleep other times. But yeah, there's plenty. There's so many fun word games you can do where they've got to scratch their brain, totally different to what the subject of the seminar is.
And there's a lot of stuff that's on YouTube, and you can watch it. And in some instances, it's the whole methodology, from the logistics right through to the activity, to the lessons learned, communication, problem solving, decision making, team build, trust, and all that type of stuff. So I strongly urge you to have a look at what you can build into your sessions so that it becomes fun and memorable, and they want you back. In the meantime, Mornay, thank you so much for sending the message. I appreciate that. Mornay sent me the message and I'll share it. And then I see there was a question from Michelle. Michelle asks the question. She says, what would you recommend, John, as far as voice training is concerned? Voice, I would imagine, projection, accents, pronunciation, things like that.
What I would say, most importantly with voice projection, is opening your mouth and not rushing. Because if you've got to project your words, a couple of groups I like to listen to, But eventually I switched them off because the guy's straining his voice as he sings because he's not opening his mouth. And I watched him. He hardly opens his mouth at all. And you can't, if you were a deaf person, you wouldn't be able to read his lips because he hardly opens his mouth. And he strains his voice because he's not opening his mouth. And one thing I learned from elocution when I was a kid, and my piano tutor's wife was a voice trainer, was open your mouth. Yes, when you sing, you need to because that enables you to project. But as a speaker, you'll find it so much easier. And it feels a little intimidating when you start to open your mouth a bit wider because we're not used to doing that. But once you start to do that, you find you can project your voice a lot further without straining it. And people can hear you much more clearly. And that's in any language. I often say to people, don't lose your accent. Don't try and speak with a plumb English accent. Keep your Afrikaans accent, keep your Zulu accent, keep your German accent, but just open your mouth and speak more slowly because then it becomes audible.
I think you make a very good point there. There are places like the Voice Clinic that actually teach you how to speak in a different accent if your accent falls heavily on a listener's ear. So John's accent is peculiar to some people, the way you pronounce words and things like that. But there's something about John which I just absolutely love. He's the perfect drunk. You know what I'm talking about, John? Won't you do that for us just for a second, just to show how versatile you could be?
There's a little skit called The Affluence of Alcohol, because drunk person just gets it round a long way. You can't say the influence of alcohol. So it's affluence of alcohol. And sometimes I do it and I don't know whether I'm pissed or not. So.
Please don't do it in the street. They'll want to know where you got the alcohol from and they might bust you, lock you up. Okay, fantastic. John, that's been brilliant. I want to see George has apparently got a question. George, you want to ask a question? I saw you asked to switch on your mic and your camera.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm sorry about the sound earlier. My PC completely went haywire and I couldn't get the mic going, but I'm on the cell phone, so that's great. John, thanks very much for a great presentation.
Pleasure, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, George. And Michelle, okay, does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, it does. But I must say, quite honestly, Ken, listening to you and John, and I'm thinking this has been my challenge for years and years. I wish I could just have a voice transplant. I would love to change my voice. And, you know, obviously now listening to John, I'm thinking, you know, there's a certain rhythm, if I can call it that. And it's quite interesting. I've been listening carefully to that rhythm in John's voice. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah,
so I guess that's one where you mentioned the voice clinic. So
yes.
That sounds very interesting. Yes, I will explore that option.
Yeah, you can try voice clinics and they can be good. They can be very helpful. Short-lived. So I suggest to all and sundry, if you have the wherewithal and the opportunity to join a Toastmasters club and just learn. And from the cost perspective, if you go to a voice clinic or you go to a voice specialist, you're probably going to spend anything up to 10,000 Rand in the space of, I don't know, 15 sessions. It'd be about 750 Rand at a time. Whereas if you come to Toastmasters for 1,500 Rand or maybe 1,600 Rand, that's what it costs you for a year's membership. And some clubs charge a meeting fee, but that includes rental of the venue and that sort of thing, but some are free. And you get to learn at your own pace. You get to fall over and get up again, and no one's going to criticize you. In fact, they're going to encourage you. Every time you fall over, they can say, yeah, get up and do it again, get up and do it again, get up and do it again. And eventually you learn in your own pace and your own time, and you grow. You can't help but grow. And that's just the value of Toastmasters. I'm promoting Toastmasters here. I shouldn't.
No, you can.
John, is that your natural voice?
Yes, this is my natural voice. There are some times when you can be rather preachy, or you can do very plumb English, or I do various British Isles accents in stories and jokes. But generally, no, this is my normal speaking voice.
Right. Okay.
And John's also got into voiceovers. I know you did Batman's book, didn't you?
Oh yes, the entrepreneur incubator. What's his name?
On the Batman, come on.
What's his name?
Okay, while you're thinking, Martin's got a question he would like to ask.
Bruce
And then
Wayne.
somebody who's called Galaxy 10 would like to ask a question. Martin, where are you? Would you like to ask a question?
Yes. John, I just want to know, sometimes you make a speech, you know, perhaps you have a cough or a sneeze. Do you apologize for that? What is the general rule for that? You know, because of a general health issue and so on. Now, what is the rule?
Interesting you asked that, and it's a good one, because earlier on when I was having a phone conversation with Ken, I said, I hope my tickly cough doesn't play up, because often when I get on the phone, I start to cough. And it's probably just the tone of voice that you use when you're speaking on the phone. So I make sure I've got a glass of water handy, just to stifle that tickle. Or sometimes if that tickle is persistent when you're speaking, just to press at the bottom of your vocal cords can help to just prevent it until you get a chance to to the side and then clear it. If it's repeated, or like you sneeze more than once, if you sneeze, oh, sorry guys, just a little tickle there. If you sneeze again, maybe it must be the dust in this place. So you can make light of it, but then if you keep sneezing again, then there's a bit of a problem. I haven't had repeated sneezes, but I've certainly had repeated coughs every now and then, and I've learned to suppress them, whether it's with drinking a little bit of water, pressing on my vocal cords. But, yeah, they can help, but yeah, they can be irritating, I know, and there's no really simple answer if coughs and sneezes are a regular thing for some.
Yeah, but I heard many professional speakers, and then they cough, and they say, excuse me, do you have to apologize if you cough in a speech?
No, on these little voice notes I do on a Tuesday morning, sometimes I'll get a bit of phlegm in my throat, and I'll just clear it, and I carry on speaking. I even had a cough in one of them. I just carried on speaking. And I hear people apologize all the time, and I don't think there's need to apologize. You just carry on. Yeah. It's a bit frustrating if it's a repeated cough, obviously, but
yes.
If it's not, if it's just a one-off, then no, it's fine. Don't apologize.
Thank you.
One last person, Galaxy 10 Night, Galaxy Note 10 Lite to everyone. Hi, John. How do you get it right to slow yourself down? Okay, Galaxy Note 10. You need to put your name on there.
It's Anthony.
Ask the question.
Hi, John. I've just got a question. Yeah, how do you actually slow yourself down? Yes, I hear what you're saying. You practice and that sort of thing. But is there sort of a hard and fast rule as to how to just bring it back?
Yeah, I think so. Slowing yourself down could come to using the occasional pause to take a breath, and then, especially in question times, when people ask questions, one of the great ways is to repeat the question they've asked. I'm just going to repeat that. Did you say this? Was I right in hearing you say this? And then you pause while they say, yes, you got it right, and then you speak. So you've slowed that down. But in your general speech, sometimes I get carried away and I get excited about what I'm speaking about. So it can be easy runaway, and you start speaking faster and faster. So to film yourself, I would say, if you're doing regular speeches and you're aware that you speak too fast, video yourself, watch yourself, and then let people critique that, and gradually, okay, I've got to slow down there. And gradually you start to slow yourself down because you know you need to, and you've got time. And if you've got too much to say and you know haven't got enough time to say it in, then cut the unnecessary stuff out of your crib notes and just keep it more simple, and just speak into that time and slow it down. Because if you slow down and you speak in time and you speak more conversationally, you'll be much more relaxed, and they'll be much happier with listening to your voice.
Yeah, the absorption will be much more then, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll take much more in. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the timekeeper has said time's up. You all know Darren's not here to share the beer with me, but when the timekeeper says time's up, then she knows, well, I know that I must wrap it up. What I want to do is I want to say, Michelle, thank you so much for your comment. Michelle has just said, yeah, this has been very valuable and one we trainers often neglect. So that I think just endorses having someone like John work with us. John, I want to ask you a question because there might be a number of people over here who would like to maybe have an hour session with you. Would you mind putting together another hour or so? They can come onto your webinar, not mine, and questions and answers, and you can give them some more hints and tips and things like that. Almost a free thing. Because what John obviously he charges for the longer sessions that he spends with people and the training that he does, but it honestly is a valuable thing. So would you be open to having some of these participants come onto your own webinar and you could host it for them and chat to them?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Yeah, sure.
Can anybody, if you just use your hand, can you just raise your hand and say you'd be interested in this? He's not going to charge you for this one. Okay, John, we've got a whole bunch of people saying yes, they would like to do that. He may charge you for the training course, but for now. John's also an ETDP facilitator, CETA facilitator. He's got his registration for that. And John has we've worked together on a number of projects where he's actually done the training for us. So I just want to start wrapping up now and saying this has been very interesting. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. How do they get hold of Toastmasters?
You can just go on the internet and type in Toastmasters International. It'll come up with a particular page. You don't even have to be a member. It'll say find a club up in usually the top right hand corner. You click on that and then it takes you, and you just type in Cape Town, South Africa, and then it will give you all 43 of the clubs in Cape Town, and you can click on the one nearest to you. Some of them are corporate. And I would suggest rather going to a public club than a corporate, because corporates tend to be private. But there'll be something not too far away, although we have guys who come to our club. We're Cape Town Toastmasters, and when we have our public meetings, our public gatherings, people come from all over. I mean, they come from Fishhook, Kommetjie, Paarl, Tableview. They travel a distance. Maybe they lived in Joburg before, where distance isn't too much of a bother for most Joburg people. Cape Town, they're even afraid to cross the road sometimes.
Okay, John, thank you so much. Out of interest, Penny, myself, Natalie, and Dee, we're going to the Mauritian Toastmasters Club shortly. So we made contact with Kravish or something like that.
Yes, that's the one at the Kudon.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so folks, time up. I think it's been very valuable. I really appreciate that. JP says, thank you very much, John and Ken, for the session. It's a pity that I could not attend from the start. Don't worry, JP, we've recorded it. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment. I've allowed these questions to stay in the recording so that you can review them, go back to them again. And Anthony, I see you there. Anthony's Galaxy Note. Yep, there we go. Now I know who Galaxy Note is. And Vivian, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I've found this very interesting. It's kept me sort of like stimulated during COVID-19 lockdown. It has been really good for me, and I trust it's been good for you as well. I also want to just remind you that next week, Darren Cool is going to be speaking about the psychological effects on individuals that have been impacted by COVID-19 and the personal doubt, unbelief, insecurities, issues that have come your way and mine. You would probably find and know about people that have lost hope and ended their lives. All kinds of horrendous things that are coming through, which is just so scary. So I think that's going to be a very useful one, and it's going to be open to anybody. So whether you're an affiliate or not, whether you're COVID-19 training material user, if you have family, friends, contact anybody. He did this presentation, which in my opinion was too rushed. It should have been a lot more in-depth, so I'm going to give him a bit more time, and that's going to be same time, same place, Wednesday next week. Darren Cool is going to be speaking on the subject. And with that, I want to say to John, thank you so much. Everybody could just give him a round of applause that John can see them. Thank you. And I'm going to say from my side, time to open the beer. Many thanks. Those of you that want a copy of the book, please send me a note. Those of you that would like to connect with John so that he can spend an hour with you on his webinar, not mine. John, you can't do it on a Wednesday night. Otherwise, you'll take everybody here. There will be nobody here if it's on a Wednesday night.
Wednesday night's a Toastmasters night, and I've got to go because I've got a Toastmaster meeting in 25 minutes.
Okay, well, and with that, so let's end the meeting. Thanks so much, folks. Really,
everybody.
really enjoyed this evening.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Ken.
lot then. Bye for now.
Bye.